But being back in Australia over the last few years, you've kind of solidified yourself as, fairly outspoken on social media. You stand up for what you think is right, and you come out defending a lot of people on certain issues. Last few years, it's been lockdowns, masks, and whatnot. At this point in your life, I think you've said it before. You don't need to come out and do this. You've established yourself. You've made your money. What made you want to come out and really put your views out there online?
I've always been outspoken. I was kind of born and raised to say, if you're asked a question, you answer it to the best of your ability, and you're going to be wrong sometimes, and you live with that. And sometimes I've been wrong, just like anyone, and happy to say that. But I guess with the whole, once this all started, no one knew what was going on, and you're like, 2-week lockdown? Oh, it makes sense. Makes sense. I've never been been involved in a pandemic or lived in a pandemic. You're like, 2-week lockdown, cool. And then it was 4 weeks, and then it was a month, and then it was blah, 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 right? So a couple of months into that, I'm living in a nice place, 4-bedroom house, fridge full of food,
living comfortably.
I'm fine, right? So I'm thinking like, shit, this must be tough for a lot of people. Imagine you're in a 2-bedroom unit with 2 kids. They're not, all of a sudden not at school. You're not at work, or you're trying to do a Zoom meeting with tough, right? And then someone reached out to me through an intermediary to do a pro gov PSA, like, hey, do the right thing. Those messages, do the right thing.
Yeah. I saw plenty of them.
Stay home. Stay safe, stay healthy. Blah blah blah. And I got the brief, and I'm sitting there reading it. And
It's like marketing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people doing it. I'm getting paid for them, right? And this is a paid thing.
Yeah, you're talking like influencers who have come out, athletes.
Hazem Al-Masri did one.
No, but I was just saying, there was heaps of people, that came out and, did the bidding of the government, say, stay in your homes, do the right thing. We're all in this together type thing. You got offered a sum of money to do the same thing, and then you obviously ran about
I was just sitting there thinking like, this is hypocritical for me to do this message, man. I'm sitting in a 4-bedroom house, pool, kids are out swimming, fridge full of food, like I said, and I'm telling like regular Joes, like, hey mate, don't go to work and pay your mortgage, stay at home. Like, I was like, nah, fuck that, I'm not doing that. So I didn't do it. And then months later, I decided to put a video out about it, and it blew up, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, and then, you can't prove it, this, that, and this. The offer's smart. It wasn't directly from what I think was the government. It came through an agency, and you don't know exactly where it's coming from. But I know it's from a government in some form,
right?
Proxy.
Yeah.
And I just thought it's hypocritical, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing that shit. Because I thought about myself. I'm like, okay, so I'm 12 years old. My father's a mechanic who would have been shut down as non-essential because no one's fucking driving their cars. Mm-hmm. How do we put food on the table? How do we, I'm locked in, my father was a pretty, this is the line, don't cross it, disciplinarian. And I'm like, now I'm spending, instead of having the freedom to go to school and get away a little bit, he's going to be stressed because he's not making money. I'm going to be stressed because I'm in the house. I'm stressing them out. They're stressing me out as a young kid. And that whole dynamic.
It's not healthy.
You factor in family violence has gone up, tenfold, domestic violence, all that. I'm just like, health. I'm not promoting this shit. And I said it, and 90% of people were like, that's really good. And then 10% were like, yeah, fuck off, mate.
Yeah, I mean, you probably heard it a lot when you were putting the videos out, but for people that were in that position, thank you.
Yeah,
we appreciated when you did say it, because like you said, you didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
And hearing someone of your notoriety and your position do that, it's like, okay, well.
And people don't understand, I'm like, I don't need the money, but I'm losing money doing it.
Yeah,
100%.
I mean, I don't care, right?
That's why I think people have a lot of respect for you, is that you sympathise with a lot of people that were going through some tough periods during that lockdown period over the last 2 years. But for example, when I first came across your Instagram, it was Nick and I were making content, and this was in the height of lockdown, and Kerry Chant, who's our health minister at the time, says no browsing in shopping centres. When you go grocery shopping, don't browse. Just grab what you need and get out. So we do a little skit where we're going in Coles and we're sprinting through the aisles, throwing shit in the trolleys, right? And I posted to TikTok and Instagram, and it blew up. Craig Kelly reposted it, and then you shared it on your Instagram story, and I was like, mate,
we made it.
An NBA champion just shared me on his Instagram. We were stoked. But and then we came grown more and more to like your stuff, because you were calling out a lot of people in power that were being very hypocritical at the time, because they're still earning a wage. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
no, pay rises.
Yeah. While everyone's being told to stay at home and lock down. It's like, it's 2 years ago, forget about it. But at the end of the day, you know, why we copped a lot of backlash was we went to that first initial lockdown protest, and you know, your dad, you said, was very hard line. You know, he's a mechanic. Our dad ran a small business. He went to that lockdown protest. We accompanied him, and it was right off the back of doing numbers, and we copped a barrage of backlash for being there. You've opened yourself up to a lot of backlash. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it does come at a cost to you. You lose marketing opportunities, things in media. You've worked with Channel 7 and whatnot. Has it taken a toll on you personally, you know, opening yourself up to a lot of backlash for your views?
The reason why it hasn't is because I can walk down the street with my head high. And what's funny about social media is all the backlash I receive on there, I receive none of it. I've had one run-in with one person in 3 years about my views. One.
No one comes up to you.
One person. Yeah. And for the most part, it's all, we really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for being a voice for us. And that means more to me than all other shit. Like the social media stuff, it's one person with 100 accounts, and times that by 10, and then you feel like you're getting, you know, you're getting cancelled online. You're not. It's a load of shit. So I judge it upon the public. When I'm out in the public, and I welcome that. If you want to come and say, hey, I don't appreciate what you, I'll debate you, man, like nicely. But if you come up and abuse me, and that's the thing on socials, like people are like, you should take the higher road, Bogut. And I'm like, well, if you're going to abuse me, I'm going to go back at you. As simple as that.
I mean, in person, they're probably like looking up like that.
No,
like,
yeah, that's what people say. But I'll have a debate, like
Yeah.
civilly. Like if you're like, hey man, I didn't appreciate your views. We're trying to stay safe, and I was like, stay safe. And then I'll talk about, you know, what about the people that committed suicide, domestic violence? You know, people were in predatory homes now, even more. Like all that kind of stuff wasn't factored in, right? So that's what it doesn't bother me that much. You feel like online sometimes it can be like, oh, I'm getting pummeled here, but I don't believe in all that shit, man. Like I judge it upon the general public and the perception, and people coming up to me. Like there's people that don't even know I play basketball, right? You're that guy that spoke out, right?
It's crazy.
I had people like went to a butcher one day, and it's like this bloke who's like a full locker, man, like labourer, like, hey mate, I saw your video on TikTok. Good on you, man. And he had no idea who the fuck I was, like other than that video, right? And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like people say, oh, you're doing it for clout or fame. For what? Like I don't need money. I don't need clout. I don't need fame. I do like to push buttons a little bit about certain topics and engage conversation, right or wrong. But no one was doing it. Like I know there was people, because I sat in back rooms when I was doing the Olympic telecast. I sat in back rooms. Yeah. It was all bullshit. It was all in the back rooms. There was no masks. There was none of that bullshit. As soon as we walk on air, it's like X's on the floor. Let's sit 5. You know, what is it? A 1.5 apart.
Let's do our choreographed dance on camera.
You annoyingly, like you guys annoyingly not doing this behind closed doors as soon as the camera's off. Like, how can you live with yourself? It's hypocritical. You know, like I just couldn't live with myself doing that, and called it out.
Well, I also want to touch on that. You know, has it affected any of your relationships with people? Because I know for the most part, like we've had the opportunity, or like a network has reached out to maybe possibly do some work, and then when it gets tossed around the marketing teams or whatnot, it's like, oh no, quick Google search, those are the COVID guys. You know, like I'm talking like Australian networks. Have you ever, because you've worked in the media, you know, whether it's free to air TV, online, has it affected any your business dealings? Because you're kind of established now as, you know, with startups and other business ventures. Has it affected you in that way?
100% lost deals. Yeah, man. Like lost deals for certain marketing things. Like I was in negotiations with some people for different things that will then also needed government funding, and then all of a sudden it went quiet because they're probably gone to the HRs and be like, hey, you want to get that guy funding if he's involved. Like, but it doesn't. I'd rather hold my head up high knowing that I stood by my morals and what I thought was right. And
you don't want to sell out.
Yeah, the rest of it's like I'm not gonna. I never was. You know, I remember like when I was in the NBA, right? There was a commercial on NBA TV and ESPN. It was with Wanda Sykes. You wouldn't have seen it here because it was US, and it was around.
Funny, I like Wanda.
It was around. You know, there was a big push about don't use the word gay as a slight. Like, you know, and fair enough, totally get it. But the commercial, they said the word like 500 times, right? And then the problem with NBA TV is there's only a small number of commercials. So it was on every damn commercial.
Like the ESPN commercials, they keep
so I was like,
recycling.
So I just posted one day. I said, man, this commercial is starting to really get annoying, man. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Got a call from the NBA, and they're like, hey Andrew, like we saw your tweet, you know, like why would you do that? I'm like, because the commercial's annoying. I don't care about what it's pushing.
You didn't have got the message.
Yeah, it could be about anything. Could be about Coca-Cola. It's annoying. It's really annoying. I have to mute my TV when it comes on. I'm sick of it. And well, you know, your brand would be nothing without the NBA. They started leaning on me like that. Like,
Jeez,
you know,
that's
you need to toe the line, motherfucker. Like, and I was just like, I said, yeah, with all due respect, I don't care. Like,
Well, they asked you to take the tweet down?
No, they
or-
asked to take it down. They were just trying to relay, like, you need to listen to us because you'd be nothing without us. And that was early in my career, and I was just like, cool. Like, where do we go from here? You know, and I moved on. But to that point, it was like I've always kind of had my views, right or wrong. And it's not normal for an athlete to have that, right? So you get the shut up and dribble shit. You get people like, oh, you're just an athlete, shut up. It's like, well, why? Like, I've got to...
You're still a person.
I'm a known
outside
person.
of basketball.
I think I've got somewhat of an influence and can get to people. I think my upbringing is, you know, somewhat is for the people because I grew up as a migrant. I grew up being called a wog. I grew up with all that stuff. So I think I'm pretty attuned to comment on that. I've lived on 3 different continents. I've lived all over the world, experienced different cultures in different cities. I've lived amongst Mormons. I've lived amongst blue-collar people in Milwaukee. I've lived upon, like, you know, some extreme viewers in San Francisco and LA.
Yeah.
So I've experienced everything, and I think I have pretty good worldviews to comment on things, and
100%.
people don't like it, too bad.
Well, on that topic, politics in sports, it's everywhere now. Whether it's taking a knee for an anthem, pride jerseys or pride rounds, as they run in with the NBL last season. Do you think there needs to be some form of separation with, let's just focus on the sport and keep politics out of the game?
I do, yeah. And I say that as an owner of the Sydney Kings. I'm in the minority, unfortunately, but I think that sport was a time where you could disconnect from the world, right? So, like, whatever's going on, natural disasters, political stuff, wars, you could, like, tune into that 2 or 3 hours and lose yourself into it.
It's an escape.
You lose yourself, and you could just, now you're like every quarter
whether
time,
it's-
hey, this cause, that cause. It's like where are we going here? And then you're dividing people, like, with all this stuff, and it's pushed by government. It's sport washing to a T. This isn't.
I think it's governments and corporations.
Yeah, no,
sponsors.
It starts with government, and government's pushing corporations, and government's pushing sporting teams. So if you go to the government for a grant and you want this and you want that, have you promoted this? You need to promote this. Oh, no worries. And then it scratch my back. You know, I'll scratch yours, and I just don't think it's good because you should be going to enjoy sport. Now, if athletes want to promote causes in their own time, I've got no problem with it. This is where I'm different to most people. If they want to go and promote a cause, take a knee.
Like you do yourself, though,
Correct.
off the court.
But don't do it during that league's, you know, time. And that's where I think the league's got lost. Like, you know, whatever cause you're pushing, there's going to be people in that league that are against that cause. But where we've got to now is they're too scared to say anything because of the backlash, right? Like, there's people that don't agree with the rainbow stuff, right? Like the full push of it. Like my position on it is, I don't care what you do as an adult, right?
Yeah.
If you want to go and what you do in your bedroom, I don't give a shit. Go and do it. Have fun,
your life.
enjoy yourself. I don't think you should be then barred from a cafe or restaurant. And I think in Australia, as far as I know, I think we're pretty progressive with that. Like, people aren't being discriminated against because of their sexuality. But you want me to be in your bedroom with pom-poms cheering on what you're doing and celebrating it? Got a problem with that, right? And I draw the line at kids. Like, leave the fucking kids alone, man. Like, kids are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They don't need to be seeing and hearing about this stuff. They'll figure it out along the adolescence and teenage years. But that's where I draw the line. And people are like, oh, so you're against the rainbow? No, I'm not against the rainbows. I'm just against, like, I'm not cheering what you do in the bedroom, brother. Like, and you shouldn't be cheering what I do. It's my business and your business, right? And that's where I think we've got lost.
That's one thing you've called out recently. There was that mural in the city in Sydney. There's videos that you post online about, you call it out when it's targeted towards kids. But now there's this thing with cancel culture in Australia, and it's worldwide. You know, Spanian, for example.
Well, he's been railed the last week.
He's been absolutely copping it in the media because he put out a video saying, you know, he's saying
He doesn't agree with what's going on in
especially in
the city.
relation to kids and how it's been shown to kids. And straight away, people dropping him. His management drops him.
Label, yeah.
Book deal that he had a book deal with, said they'll never publish another book with him. And it's just straight away, it's either conform or not.
Exactly.
And like you said, you don't want to be cheering other people on in their bedroom, but more so, there's other people that have different views.
Yeah.
And if you're preaching tolerance,
That's the thing.
you got to be tolerant of everyone's views.
Inclusion. The inclusion, it's just.
Do you think
it's a
cancel
misnomer.
culture? Do you think cancel culture is going too far? Okay, after the last 2 years, you can be cancelled for a lockdown, I think, but now it just seems to be like it just keeps getting worse and worse. And
100%.
Where's the next goalpost being
Well,
moved?
yeah, you can't have an opinion, and like I said, opinions are. You want people to have opinions and have
Discussion.
Debate. My whole thing was, even during the lockdowns, was like, let's have a pro lockdown, doctor, scientist, whatever, and a anti-lockdown. And let's have that debate. Let's have a pro-mandate. Let's have it on mainstream. We saw none of that. It was all one-sided.
Zero.
It's the same thing with
We had
this.
Lisa Wilkinson telling us, stay inside
Exactly,
and please
but
put
it's
us
the
in lockdown.
conforming that I don't like. My family fled communism. And people say, it's like extreme. No, it starts slowly, man. It starts slowly with this kind of shit. And that's exact way things happen in the 60s, 70s, 80s in the former Yugoslavia, right?
Ignorance of
It
history.
happens slowly, and people are like, it's just a little bit, it's just a little bit, and then here you are, 5-kilometre radius, can't leave your house. So with all that stuff, it's live and let live. I've got no problem with that. Just leave the kids out of it. And, it's almost like not just conforming, we want you to conform. No, you have to also celebrate what I'm doing or you're a bigot.
Yeah.
Hang on a second, like, you do what you want to do. I'm not stopping you. I'm not protesting what you do. But because I'm not actually celebrating and saying, oh, wow, that's great. You're so brave and stunning. Like, I'm now still labeled. Like, that's wrong. And I think people are, there's the last couple of weeks with some of this stuff, people are starting to voice. And until adults, especially with the kids stuff, until adults use their voice, this shit's going to continue. And I've got mothers, so many mothers have come up to me the last week, man. You wouldn't believe it. Mothers that are like, thank you for your message about the, all these different genders and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's important. Mothers are afraid for their children. Like,
why do you think people are scared to voice their opinion? Is it because they're scared of being viewed, or being cancelled of public backlash? Because, like you said, you probably get a lot of messages from people, but they won't publicly come out and say it. Because if there were more people sharing their view, maybe governments wouldn't be so overreaching, or people wouldn't be pushing certain agendas.
Yes, there's a lot of people that reach out and say, I'd love to share it, but I can't because of my job, or they'll subtly like it but won't repost it, so which is fine. I get it, but a lot of people, one thing I've noticed is a lot of businesses in Australia rely on government in some form. A lot, even small businesses, there's some sort of grant, or there's a deal with a government contract, or there's this or that. That plays a huge part and is severely unspoken about, right? Like, so I get why people are afraid. But with some of this stuff, like the kids stuff, I draw the line on it, and that doesn't stop until we all say, no, that's bullshit. Like, we're not doing that. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Call me whatever name you want, but I don't accept having drag queens read to 6-year-olds, right?
Or dancing in front of them in the library.
With G-strings and whatever. Like, I would say that whether it was a 10 out of 10 hot female, like 6-year-olds, man. Like,
keep them innocent.
What are you doing? Like, it's not a thing about anti a certain group. It's like, hey, like, sexuality stuff, that was grooming once upon a time. It was called grooming, right? It was normalizing sexual behavior to young children to, this is normal. Oh, yeah.
How do you think kind of society's transformed then? So, like, that was considered grossly wrong maybe 10, 15 years ago, but now it's considered something you have to celebrate or think's normal. How did society shift that quickly?
Good question. Because it's slowly happened over time.
Yeah.
It's slowly happened, and now we're here, and now, the unfortunate reality is eventually a pendulum's going to swing the other way, which is going to go extreme the other way, where it's going to be like, probably too extreme. You don't want that neither. So you want a balance. Like I said, live and let live. Just stop all in your face shit about whatever cause it is. That's what kills me. It's like, live and let live and get on with life.